Like and subscribe and click the bell icon to get new video updates.
Morrison government's fall marks end of Howard-era ascendancy, May 26, 2022, 5.00 am. Save login, register or subscribe to save articles for later. Share normal text size, larger text size, very large text size, 540. View all comments. Federal election 2022 full election results. ALP 75, LNP 57 in 10, GRN 30th 276 seats needed for a majority. 4 still to call. 76.11% counted. Updated May 26, 2022, 3.39 p.m. As the results rolled in, it was difficult to grasp. The liberals of the 2020s, eerily like the Soviet communists of the 1980s, were suddenly an anachronism. Like the Politburo, they too had become entrapped within their fervent ideologies and grown so distant from reality that they lost the moral legitimacy to govern. Power was now hemorrhaging away in a death agony of lost seats. Morrison was widely credited as the architect of this annihilation. But perhaps he was no more than the sinister final act of a larger story that began decades earlier when John Howard was elected Prime Minister in 1996. John Howard celebrates his election victory on March 2, 1996. Credit Simon O'Dwyer. Of all Australian Prime Ministers, it is Howard who can rightly claim to be the most transformative, reshaping the nation so completely that, other than a Labor interregnum of 6 years, it has been Conservative governments largely in his image ever since. Every issue that defined Morrison's downfall had deep roots in Howard's prime ministership. It was Howard, after all, who from 1996 on campaigned internationally against binding global carbon emission reduction targets. His reasoning for doing so, he told Cabinet in 1997, was that Australia was a major exporter of energy. His advocacy to key world leaders, Cabinet papers reveal, proved influential. And so, we led the world backwards. He similarly turned back a historic tide of national progress on everything from the Republic to reconciliation, refused to even use the word multiculturalism in his early years of prime ministership, and set the dogs of xenophobia onto Australian politics, transforming refugees into a threatening invasion force. He revelled in fomenting culture wars while gutting institutions and corroding civil society, attacking it whenever it stood up for the environment, the rights of citizens, workers, or of the weakest. He purged the Liberal Party of what were then called wets, the moderates of the day, paving the way for the far-right fundamentalist clique it has now become. His success lay in speaking to what was smallest and worst in Australia's breast: fear, greed, apathy and racism. It was a template for all that followed. Howardism was to be taken up with a new aggression and misogyny by his self-declared love child, Tony Abbott. Continued, despite his postpartum revisions, by Malcolm Turnbull. Until there came its final decadent phase, the Morrison government, a rabble characterized by sleaze, scandal and self-interest. By then, Howardism resembled a degenerative disease. What once had been merely cynical gestures to win votes or wedge opponents had transformed into a terminal cancer of mystical doctrine. They had come to believe their own baseless babble, and they did not get that harassment in the workplace was not part of the culture wars but lived experience. So too human-induced fires, floods and cyclones. They never realized that their ideology did not stand the test of reality, whether it be rain or flame or allegedly being raped meters away from the Prime Minister's office. Scott Morrison concedes defeat on election night. Credit James Brickwood. It was widely noted that they didn't get women, though, as Samantha Maiden noted, it was women who finally got them. At root, the problem was that they didn't get people, not the old, who were left to die unnecessary, wretched deaths while they went to the cricket. Not anyone under 40 who would never earn a home, nor the trans kids they damaged or the poor they may have driven to suicide with the illegal and evil robodebt, wasting nearly $2 billion of our money in the service of persecution. They didn't get kindness or decency, that the suffering in the theatres of cruelty they called border defence not only distressed but shamed many Australians. They didn't get that their ceaseless rorting and corruption offended people who built lives around trust and honesty. While our artists were loathed, our scientists belittled, and our journalists pursued by a politicized federal police for exposing alleged war crimes, party hacks and corporate drones were routinely rewarded with sinecures and board seats and the bling of yet another order of Australia, a currency now more debased than the Iranian rial. And as though it were the play within the play, Andrew Hastie, rising star of the Liberal Party, described a recognizable moral hell in recent testimony to the Ben Roberts-Smith trial, confirming comments he had made to journalists about being a SAS